Well, the outlook for utility scale solar in 2021 is a bright one. And with new and established markets growing fast, high-powered modules coming onto the scene, and regulations for power plant control changing the nature of grid connections, there's a real need for products that deliver flexibility, can be supplied quickly and cost-effectively, and can handle high power classes. Hello and welcome to this PV Magazine webinar powered by GoodWe. My name is Jonathan Gifford. I'm the editor-in-chief of PV Magazine Global. Well, the title for today's webinar is Packed with Power, High-Powered Solutions for Agile Utility-Scale Solar Projects. And we've got an excellent selection of speakers and panelists today to take you through the market, the financial and regulatory trends that are defining utility-scale PV in 2021. Along with that, we have technologists from leading suppliers that can provide you the info you need to design and execute powerful PV projects quickly and effectively in 2021. We have 6 speakers and panelists today, roughly divided into 2 sessions. The first on the European marketplace, the second a more detailed look into technology trends in 2021. Our speakers are Thomas Herring, the Managing Director of GoodWe Europe, Josephine Burke, Research and Analysis Manager at IHS Markit, Ali Bouatour, the Technical Director at GoodWe Europe, Christian Leib, the Managing Director at YieldFox, Jason Yan, Senior Product Marketing Manager at LongG, and Torsten Sieker, Global Industry Management, Solar Power for Phoenix Contact. And I want you to get involved today. Please don't hesitate to send through your questions, your comments, and join the discussion. I'll be feeding the questions that you send through into the discussion. We do have panel discussions, and also at the end of each presentation, I'll be asking your questions of our speakers and panelists today. So I can't say this often enough, please do get involved. One question we always get is, will the slides be available afterwards? And I'm pleased to say, yes, they will. All registrants to this webinar will be receiving an email actually from the GoToWebinar portal with a link to the recording of this event and also where you can get all of your downloads, which of course, then you can share with friends and colleagues who weren't able to attend today. And the PV Magazine webinar and events team will be standing by throughout the event today to answer any questions you have, any technical questions about the platform itself or any other administrative matters. First of all, one thing that I'd like to hear is whether you can hear me loud and clear. It's always nice to know that I'm not kind of just talking into the abyss on this very bright and sunny, but also very chilly morning here in Berlin. So let me know whether you can hear me, and also let me know where in the world you're joining us from today. Always nice to have an idea about where all of our attendees are coming from. But let's get things underway. As I mentioned, GoodWe is our webinar partner for today. The China-based power electronics supplier has a relatively short but powerful history in the PV industry that is very probably familiar to you. Just in a little over a decade, 10 years, GoodWe has supplied PV projects in over 80 countries from 16 regional offices right around the world. And it's built a reputation of delivering additional functionality to its end customers. So it's not just about price, it's not just about service, it's also about functionality. And actually this approach was recognized by PV Magazine's independent jury in 2019 when it picked up the annual award in the inverter category for its AES series hybrid inverters. And also GoodWe was identified as being the leading supplier globally of hybrid inverters by analyst Woodmac in mid-2020. But it's the utility scale that we're particularly focused on today. And to get things started, GoodWe Europe Managing Director Thomas Herring is going to look at some of the key trends both driving the marketplace today and also some trends that are just on the horizon that are emerging onto the scene, including some of the challenges like integrating high levels of solar into European grids. Thomas himself launched GoodWe in the European solar market in 2018 and has served as the Managing Director of Operations here ever since. Prior to that, he held various management positions in technology companies, including in the semiconductor industry since 2010 rather. Without further ado, Thomas, I'll welcome you to the stage and pass the floor over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks very much for the introduction. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to have you all on, and I'm looking forward to the coming 2 hours with a discussion with you. GoodWe, as Jonathan said, has been around for several years, been founded in China in 2010. I think the European division and the European business came fast along over the last 3 years by building. I'm clicking hopefully once only. Okay, thank you. Have been coming around quite significantly over the past 3 years with being headquartered here in Munich in Germany. And we having local offices in the Netherlands, in the UK, in Turkey, but also now in Italy, Spain, and Poland, and South Africa. And from next month onwards, we will also have a local office representation in France. Since we had the stock listing last year in September, the company developed a lot in terms of build up in capacity, like more than 20 gigawatts now, and also in HR development. We have more than 2,000 employees by now and added a lot of new R&D engineers, more than 300 and going to 400 engineers over this year. And this is also a very important task, as the company, as you can see here, is covering the whole portfolio of inverter business. So we're having the whole range of on-grid string inverters, starting with 700 watts, single-phase inverters going all the way up to 1500 volts, 250 kilowatt inverters in utility scale. And this is the type of products that we also will put more focus on a bit later. On top, we have a very high range in hybrid and storage inverters, in low voltage and high voltage, single phase and 3-phase in the residential part and also the commercial part that we can cover. And since this year, we are also adding and have added products in the battery field, so having low voltage batteries and coming out with high voltage batteries, and also have already introduced all-in-one storage solution for the European market. Jonathan mentioned this before. We've been regarded by many companies looking at market research as among the top 10 PV inverter market share companies. In particular, we are very proud of the rating we received last year from Wood Mackenzie, that they rated us as the #1 and the biggest storage inverter manufacturer worldwide. And this is activity that we have done here, and all the effort we have done here is also recognized. A particular important award for us is the award from TÜV Rheinland, which is the old Quality Matter Awards. This is an award which recognizes innovation, quality, and reliability. And GoodWe has received this award 5 times in a row, and there's no other company who has achieved this award. And if you open our products and look at our production line, you will see there is a lot of high quality products inside, and in terms of passive components and semiconductors, the who is who of the semiconductor industry is included in there. And also when you look at the production line, there is a lot of testing and quality assurance measurements taken in order to have this high reliability. And we are very proud that companies like TÜV Rheinland recognize this effort. Over the past 3 years, we have in the EMEA countries, EMEA meaning Europe, Middle East, Africa, put a lot of service activities in place. So when you look at these countries here, and it's a bit of a busy foil, but I just want to give you here the snapshot here that in all of these countries that you can see here, and most of the major European countries and also in South Africa, we offer technical support in local language and technical hotline. We also do typically the replacement, if there are replacement needed, from a local stock in the country. And for some exotic products, we could do it also from a central warehouse in Europe. We do on-site technical support, and we also have a repair center in Europe. So over the past 3 years, the company GoodWe has grown a lot in a very European-based company with a lot of local support. And I think this is very important, as inverter business is a service-heavy business, and this is our major effort that we're taking these years. I'd like to show you now couple of trends that we see here in the markets, especially in Europe, but also in the other EMEA countries, and would like to have this discussion a bit later. And also the last in the webinar, we will talking about these topics a bit more. I think a major trend, which is quite obvious, is that even though the situation we currently have in the world with Corona will put a big doom into all the economies worldwide, it appears that in pretty much all of the European countries, the renewable energy, in particular the photovoltaic, is considered a countermeasure to compensate the negative impact from Corona. So we see in all of the European countries a major trend towards new programs in PV and a very healthy market for our industry. And another trend that we see now, and it's also coming back, is a very strong recovery in the European utility scale market, in the PPA market. Obviously, continuously in Spain, but also in Germany we see it more. In France, there's a trend. We see it also coming back in the UK. There is the indication that it's coming back in UK. We see this market also in Netherlands, in Poland, and also probably next year in Italy. One of the most interesting trends and activities in the market, which I find maybe the most important one actually, is the trend or the demand in hydrogen. And this comes from twofold. On the one hand, hydrogen by itself will grow a lot in demand due to the ammonia need for transport, for heating, and for industrial use. So there's already a trend which grows the need by 800% over the next 3 decades. This is the one trend. And hydrogen actually comes in different colors. I mean, you have the natural hydrogen, which is a blue color. And then you have different colors where hydrogen is produced from, like the pink hydrogen is the one which is produced by nuclear energy. And the green hydrogen, what I would like to talk about, is the one which is produced by renewable energies. And besides the need of hydrogen by itself, I also think that hydrogen can be and will be a major factor for storage of photovoltaic energy. I believe that due to the fact that hydrogen can be used as a storage product, this creates a strong demand in solar belt countries for big ground mount photovoltaic projects. And then the PV energy will be stored in or transferred into hydrogen, and this hydrogen then can be transferred by gas pipelines actually into Northern Europe, and these gas pipelines just have to be repurposed for hydrogen. And this hydrogen can be also stored here in Europe and have to be used here in salt caverns. There's certain trends in this direction, and I believe if this is doable in the near future, this will drive a big trend into Sunbelt PV utility scale power plants in Southern Europe, but also in Africa and other regions. Another interesting trend for sure is the trend into the smart energy integration due to the sector coupling of electricity with heating and mobility. Drives a big need in electrification in the market, and I think the prosumer, so to speak, the producer and consumer of the energy will need and will take much more control in the production, in usage and scheduling of the electrical energy that is produced by him. And there is a lot of there's a trend in the market that these systems get much more powerful in the near future, and also GoodWe puts a lot of effort into this IT infrastructure here. A trend, especially in some European countries, like in Germany, we see is the growing size of PV systems in the residential segment. especially in mature markets where own consumption is mandatory. There is a lot of analysis, for example, from the Technical University of Berlin, that the bigger the systems, the residential systems are, including storage, the faster the payback time of the system is. So that is a trend we see a lot in the past few years in Germany, and also in neighboring countries like Italy is this trend also seeable at the moment. And as a last topic that I would like to mention is the storage. The residential storage, but also the commercial storage, becomes more and more an additional growth opportunity in new countries. We see a strong storage demand these days in Italy, and there are some other markets like Belgium opening up for storage solutions. And we also believe that countries like Poland will also in the near future have a much bigger demand for storage. So there are some certain trends that we see in the market that will drive our activities, and where GoodWe is also working in all these different trends and trying to offer solutions, and how these solutions look like and what you think about them, and if you feel that there is some other trends, other needs required. This is something we'd like to discuss with you today. Thank you very much for your time, and I pass it back to Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for that presentation and introduction. I'm pleased to say we've got some questions coming in already. We have people joining us from Tübingen in Germany, Switzerland, Dubai, a couple of people in the UAE, and India, of course. And Thomas, one quick question for you before you leave, although you will be joining us later in the panel discussion. There's a question about the what are your expectations for Eastern European markets, and how will you serve those? In particular, Albania has been selected, but I think more broadly, Eastern European markets, and how is GoodWe going to serve them?
The Eastern European markets to me is even east of Poland and Czech Republic, because in Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary is for Central East European countries where we are already active in all these countries. The other markets, we see a very strong trend in some of the countries, for example, in Romania, also Bulgaria, and also some of the ex-Yugoslavian countries like Serbia, Croatia, is more and more demand coming up. We are actually building up, we have actually our European repair center already in Poland, and also a strong service team there. And we're building up currently some local technical pre-sales engineers and sales managers in order to cover this from a technical standpoint and from a sales standpoint. But these markets are for sure among the most interesting and to developing countries for us to come. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. A positive outlook then. Thank you very much. Thomas Herring is the Managing Director of GoodWe Europe. Well, let's continue our examination of European utility scale markets today. Our next speaker is Josephine Burke. She's the Research and Analysis Manager with IHS Markit. Her presentation is going to focus on Europe's utility scale revival and future trends, as you can see there. Josephine has more than 10 years experience in PV, and she works in the IHS Markit solar and energy storage team, focusing on the downstream market. This includes developer and EPC strategies. Josephine, thanks for your time today, and I'll pass the floor over to you.
Thanks, Jonathan, for the introduction. So I'm here to give all of you some snapshots on what's happening in the utility scale segment in Europe today and over the coming 4 or 5 years. Europe is definitely back on the scene for utility scale projects. Overall, Europe ended with 176 gigawatt of PV, so all segments at the end of 2020. We expect that by the end of 2024, or from now until 2024, we will even have more than that. We'll have about 200 gigawatt of new installed capacity. So definitely Europe is back. This is, we're far away from the old feed-in tariff markets. We now have PV being very competitive on price. And this is how we see both PPAs and also the tenders across the several countries those are the factors that drive the utility scale segment forward over the next years. And as we as the utility scale segment is growing, we expect more than half of the new installed capacity in Europe to be utility scale PV. And with utility scale PV, I'm talking about systems that are larger than 5 megawatts in size. And now we even have, we have a lot of projects going in above 50 megawatt, above 100 megawatt. We will mention that a bit later. This curve you're familiar with. This is what the European PV market has looked like. You had the big boom in the early 10s, let's say, and then kind of a slowdown, and then after 2018 we've just seen how PV has come back on the scene. A big part of this has been, of course, the falling prices, and also that there was kind of a rush in a lot of countries to try to meet the 2020 targets that they realized in 2017, 2018 that it was time to really start boosting PV installations again. So we have this combination of tenders and also private developments and through corporate PPAs. Till 2030, now the European countries have new targets. If you go through the different national action plans to meet these 2030 targets, you get roughly 200 gigawatts of planned new PV across all markets, but we expect that to be surpassed, clearly surpassed, and those are just indicative targets that the different countries have put in place. Talking about tenders and competitiveness of PV. Here are a couple of tender prices from different countries, and prices have come down, but you do see that we're kind of between the 40 and 50 euro range in a lot of markets, with Portugal having been standing out as the lowest price market so far. That is also, it's part due to the solar resources, but also part to some of the specifications of their tender scheme. I could also, I don't have the Spanish tender in here yet, but of course the Spanish tender that was published now in January, there you had pricing between 20 and roughly 20 to 30 euros per megawatt hour, also showing the competitiveness of PV in Southern Europe. If we look at different segments, we had a discussion before this presentation about also looking at different specific segments. One area that's been a niche market so far, but it's growing strongly, is the floating PV segment, with the Netherlands really driving this market. And over the next 5 years, we forecast about 1 gigawatt of floating PV to be installed, and this also will help to reduce some of the land constraints that we see in some markets. So Netherlands is definitely leading the way here, and this is a development that could become even stronger over the next decades. So where are the revenue streams going to come from? I talked about tenders and private PPAs. So to the left here, you see revenue streams in 2020 for European utility scale markets. So about 45% of the installed capacity was based on tenders, and 45%, another 45% was based on corporate PPAs. If we're looking at 2024, what we expect installations to look like, we're going to have more than 25 gigawatt of new installed utility scale capacity in 2024, and then we do see tenders becoming very, very important for this capacity to be installed, because a lot of the countries now are really focused on developing tender schemes. Private PPAs are also, of course, a strong part of the picture, but just in terms of percentage, they will get a slightly lower share. Thomas also mentioned hydrogen, and we do see the first the first ramp up of PV systems for hydrogen production starting around 2024. We already have some initial large-scale projects being built dedicated for hydrogen production. In Spain, there will be some completed this year and next year. But by 2024, we expect as much as 8% of the new utility scale PV capacity to be for dedicated hydrogen production. And we have a specific hydrogen team within IHS Markit just looking at the hydrogen supply chain and the developments there. So we talking back and forth to see how much PV we're going to fit into that picture. And it seems like right now PV is going to be a big part of what we can call the green hydrogen wave that we're going to see over the next decades. Looking at system sizes of utility scale projects, here we definitely seen a change over the past two years, especially with the large projects in Spain. So if you look at the blue part here of this chart, you see the evolution of systems, how many systems, or the amount of capacity coming from projects greater than 100 megawatts. So this is mainly because of the evolution in Spain, 2019, 2020. We see that this share is growing quickly, and we now have several 500 plus plants being developed, and those are going to keep up this blue part going forward. So yeah, we're looking at bigger systems compared to what we had in the previous boom in Europe. In terms of which companies that are involved, we do see more of a variety in terms of companies. A lot of the big utilities and oil majors are making a lot of progress in terms of PV installations. So we look at the 30 developers that currently have pipelines larger than 500 megawatts. So in terms of real concrete projects that we observed on the market, not just blanket statements on how much pipeline they have, but in terms of real projects that we can track. Then almost half of that capacity, of that pipeline capacity, about those 30 gigawatts of capacity, comes from utilities, large IPPs, and oil majors. And we do see that these companies are going to play a bigger role, even bigger role going forward. Then, of course, we're talking about inverters today. So in terms of the inverters, we see that string inverters in Europe are increasing also in their share of the market. After 2018, we've seen a drastic increase of the use of string inverters, with shipments to have reached close to 5 gigawatts in 2020. And if looking at the other segment that is highly interesting in terms of inverter developments, the 1500 volts, which were kind of a novelty a few years back. Now they represent, on a global scale, they represent half of the global market, and we just see this trend increasing over the coming years. A lot of it has been driven by utility scale PV in Asia. But the European market is definitely also strongly looking at 1500 volts and above for inverters. So yes, Europe is back. Prices for PV has declined drastically. We have tenders, we have a lot of private developments through corporate PPAs. And if in the last 10 years we had about 150 gigawatt of new capacity installed, over the next 5 years we expect more than 200 gigawatt to be installed across Europe. And this could be even more if we see even further development on the hydrogen side. So yes, Europe is back, and with that I'll hand over to Jonathan.
Thank you, Josephine. A good message to leave. Europe is back. Quite encouraging. Josephine Burke is a research and analysis manager with IHS Markit. Josephine, before you go, although you will be joining us again for the panel discussion, we do have some questions coming through. Let me quickly get them up as quickly as I can. We were talking about markets in the east of Europe. We have one question. What are your expectations for Poland in particular? Do you think that will become a major PV marketplace in 2021 or the near future?
Yes, well, Poland is already a major market. It's definitely not emerging anymore. You know, I was following the Polish market for years and going to conferences where it was like, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and now finally it has happened. And we do see a lot of development in Poland. So it's definitely here to stay, and we see a lot of new different types of projects are being developed also on old mining sites, and it will be very exciting to follow the Polish market.
Okay, indeed. I remember a few years ago, there was great expectations for Poland. It was always the next big thing, but it now seems like it finally is. That's really encouraging. Thank you, Josephine, and you'll stick around and join our panel discussion. So if you have any questions for Josephine, don't hesitate to send them through and we'll get to them later. But moving on with our presentations today, our next speaker is Ali Boatur. He's the Technical Director, GoodWe Europe. He'll be presenting on serving the dynamic European marketplace. Ali heads up GoodWe Europe's pre and post sales activities in the EMEA region. Prior to joining GoodWe, Ali worked on the development and launch of various solar components across the residential, commercial, and utility scale segments. He has also been involved in the realization of a number of utility scale projects as part of international joint ventures, so brings a wealth of experience to the table. Ali, thank you very much for your time this morning, and I'll pass the floor over to you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and welcome and good morning, good afternoon to all of our attendees and audience throughout the globe. Very glad to hear from Josephine that Europe is back, and we as a manufacturer of components and of inverters and a solution supplier, of course, we would like to contribute to Europe being back and provide the technological solutions to support that trend in Europe. And this is what I would like to be sharing with you today in this presentation. The main question also for the discussion later is, how is the inverter industry coping with the trends and with these requirements of utility scale solar projects? And we've heard from Josephine a lot of topics already, a lot of trends, and I summarized them in this slide in a couple of bullet points. And these prominent trends are string inverters that are increasing their market share. 1500 volt DC systems are becoming a de facto standard. We are seeing in the market the high power modules of 500 watt peak and plus and even higher, which are on the rise. Floating PV offering new opportunities, but also new geographic areas which used to be very challenging for PV are now becoming more accessible. And finally, or last but not least, we've seen the installations and the market from 2009 and 10. This is also bringing up also interesting segment of the market, which is related to revamping. So a lot of installations are requiring repowering, and all of that comes together with the grid operators that are now putting more attention into power quality, into grid support functions that PV is required to bring to the grids. So we see all of these trends. Inverters are the component which is in the central of all of these trends, as it's linked to nearly every component in the PV system. And throughout this presentation today, I would like to share with you our take from GoodWe side on how we are progressing with these trends and what are our solutions for that. All right, let's start with string inverters, packed with power, and this is the title of our webinar today. Packed with power, because if we look at the trend of string inverters that are typically used also in utility scale, coming in the past with very small market share in utility scale for string inverters, we developed from being in the range of 25 kilowatt for an inverter around 2015, 2016, to increasing this power which is packed in only one inverter by a factor of 10 or more. And today in 2021, we're offering solutions of our HT series with 250 kilowatt in only one string inverter. And this comes along with the development of increasing size of middle voltage stations. So overall, the PV components are being packed with more power. We see this trend also in solar panels, and Jason later from LongG Solar will for sure also share more about that. And this trend of increasing power is not just a technological trend, but of course technological trend which is bringing benefits to customers, benefits to EPCs, developers, and companies that want to operate PV power plants on the utility scale. And we're going to address here a bit a topic which sometimes in the EPC and developer community is a ideological topic, emotional one. Sometimes is string versus central inverters. Of course, every technology has advantages and has a big community which is supporting it and thinks that that's the better technology. But overall, it's a solution. And what we are seeing with the trend of increasing power in our string inverters, and that's what you see on the pictures. Now, in a much more compact size, we are able to pack a much higher power density. So compared to a typical central inverter, which packs about 0.2 watt per liter, we pack 1 watt per liter in the volume of a string inverter, so 5 times higher power in the same in the inverter body. And with this trend of increasing power, of doubling the power, of increasing the power of the string inverters, now we are shrinking the difference of capex, of initial investment, compared to central inverters. And historically, this has been the main advantage of central inverters. One of the main advantages is of course the initial investment cost. And now with increasing power of the string inverters, we do require only fewer string inverters in one installation compared to the past. And the other advantages of string inverters, such as easier transportation, construction, installation, also integrating different components, especially on the DC side, and having a better usage of the ground surface, all add up together to decreasing this capex difference compared to central inverters. And on the other hand, the advantages that string inverter has on terms of operation and maintenance are also increasing because new features such as string level monitoring, which are integrated into the inverters, remote operation and maintenance, IV curve diagnosis, all features that simplify the maintenance and make the replacement of the inverter easier, plus adding additional components in terms of simplifying and making failure detection capabilities much more integrated into an inverter. So this is the trend and the benefits which are coming with more powerful string inverters. And on the technology side, what we as a manufacturer are using in order to pack that much power is the 1500 volt DC technology. And Josephine mentioned earlier about this increasing and also becoming de facto standard in the utility scale industry with very high market shares. And this 1500 volt DC voltage does not only increase the inverter power density, but it also brings benefits for the power plant overall. And what you see here in this slide, in this schematic overview, if you compare traditional string inverter with 1100 volt DC technology with inverter HT series with 1500 volt DC technology, we are able, or the EPC is able to put up to 40% more modules per string, and this reduces up to 40% the DC cabling costs. So this is a major advantage also in terms of overall capex, overall investment costs, but also helps generating higher electricity. And we made some side-by-side comparison in some ground mount installations of the 1100 volt and 1500 volt systems, and we do see that the 1500 volt systems have a higher electricity generation of 1 to 2%. This is due, among the technical people under you, higher voltage allows for operation with lower currents, and this means lower losses and therefore higher electricity generation. Also, on the other hand, the inverters are able to be more efficient with this voltage technology. And next to that, the additional benefit is the increased DC power density, and this is especially on the panel side, and I think Jason from LONGi will also be sharing more about this trend later. Panels are also driving the trend for us in the inverter industry. Our HT series matches the trend of high power modules. Today, the typical module using utility scale already today for installations or for projects that are now under the short-term planning are 500 watts and higher. And this is what we see as a major trend. And this 500 watt peak modules and higher, they come with a higher input current, which can go up to 14 amps or even higher. And this is what you can see in the list of the most prominent suppliers, and the panels that we see our EPCs and partners using on the day-to-day life. This put a challenge on the inverters, on the traditional inverters, string inverters, that the input current is limited on the DC side of this inverters of maximum 13 amp, which means if a panel is operating with a higher current, that additional current will be lost, and the additional generation will be lost. While with our HT series, we are able to deal with input currents of 15 amp, and this makes it basically suitable for this trend of increasing module power in the industry. On the other hand, we also see already trends of even higher than 15 amp modules operating with 18 amps, with coming and announced for the market. And the good news, also our inverters with the maximum MPPT current of 30 amp are able to operate with this type of modules with a high DC and AC ratio. So among the ones of you interested in support in designing your projects, do not hesitate to contact us in order to get the right solution for you. Panels drive also the popularity of tracking systems that also do appear. In the past, there was barely a link between inverters and tracking systems. Now with the string inverters getting closer to the tracking system itself, we start establishing communication between the inverters and the tracking systems in order to integrate things into one monitoring system, but also of giving power supply to the tracking system, not only from the panels, but also from the AC side, which allows for easier maintenance and also operation by night of or under snowfall, as an example of the tracking systems. We talked, and Josephine mentioned the floating PV projects as an interesting market in Europe, coming mainly Netherlands, Greece, but also in other markets. Floating PV has multiple challenges related to construction, but also later on to the operation and maintenance. And what you see here in the photo is the concept. What we recommend and what we offer to our partners is a centralized concept, combining string inverters with a centralized design. So this brings the best out of two worlds, basically by simplifying the operation and maintenance and also the construction, having a foundation and anchoring on one single point, and on the other hand, taking benefit of features, integrated features of string inverters, and mainly protection features are very critical here. You know, floating PV comes with a lot of humidity, with a lot of exposure to water, splash, and so on. And we can support this with a set of different features. You see here integrated PID recovery board, so potential news degradation, which is a phenomenon which can happen in certain modules. That's a recovery board that puts a reverse voltage on the panels that we are integrating to the inverter, and that helps the panels to recover from such a PID effect. Also, the inverters are having a IP66 protection rate for the whole inverter and IP68 protection for the cooling fans. So IP rating is a critical. Inverters will be exposed to water splash, will be exposed to water in this environment. So the IP66 rating makes sure that the inverters under strong water jets are fully tight and fully waterproof. Still, and this is maybe a bit of misconception, sometimes IP rating is critical, but it's not sufficient for this type of application only, because what IP rating doesn't say is how does the humidity impact in the long run. IP rating doesn't detect whether humidity will diffuse slowly inside the inverter over the years, and that's something which might happen. And to counter that, we are the only manufacturer who has implemented internal humidity detection sensors inside the inverter, which means after many years with under this very strong humidity conditions, in case, despite the best product design, humidity is accessing inside the electric components, the humidity sensor will give an alert, and the operator of the power plant will be able to react before any damage happens. Next to floating PV, PV is also being more accessible for challenging grounds, installation in hills, in mountains, in areas which in the past used to be fully excluded because of the cost, because of logistic efforts and so on. And right now, if we take an example of 3 megawatt SAP array with our HT series, it will be packed with 144 multiple power MPP tracker and IV curve diagnosis, and this helps in operating under this shading conditions with different tilts and azimuth. And the IV curve diagnosis is a parameter and is a feature that also helps for remote operation and maintenance. So basically, by one button start, one push of button remotely, the system will make an intelligent analysis of the fault causes. It will report any faulty strings. It will be self-learning in terms of which over the time the development based also on the irradiation and different external factors, taking all of that into consideration and providing the right advice to the operator of the power plant. And this online detection is something which happens without even interrupting the power generation of the power plant. Hot areas have been popular in the past, and the popularity is increasing. And for that, it's critical to have components that are adaptable for operation in hot regions. The heat control, heat dissipation is critical to ensure the cooling of the components inside the inverters. We do provide a set of 6 replaceable powerful fans with the inverter, and that allows for the inverter to be producing at full power up to 36 degrees and only start derating after that, and still after that being able to generate on a very high level of 90%, even at 45 degrees. And this increases not only the power generation, but also extends the lifetime of the inverter. Well, last but not least, now talking about the revamping of existing projects. Remember from the slides which Josephine shared, the markets in 2009, 2010, many markets had their initial utility scale installations or large commercial installations, and you know, the operator of these power plants are now faced with a question: well, when do I need to do something? I mean, is my power plant already? Is it time to replace components? Do I have to wait? But on the same time, no one wants to wait until things fail. So it's not an easy question. Sometimes the signs are clear because components are failing, but sometimes not yet. So the timing is always a question, always a challenge. Now, if we bring it specifically to the inverter, a very big challenge for all of these power plants is that today's inverters have a significantly different power compared to the inverters offered 10 years ago, which means what used to be a central inverter in the past, typically 200 kilowatt, starting from 200 kilowatt, going up maybe to 630 kilowatt on that times, is now much smaller than any existing central inverter on the market. It rather matches the string inverter size, but still, any change of the inverter comes with a lot of challenges. It might require the whole power plant to be rewired. Also, the communication monitoring might not be compatible with the existing infrastructure when we bring new inverters. So not an easy topic, but very interesting one. And what we would like to convey to you as a message here, First, string inverters offer very high flexibility, so they are adaptable to a lot of different situations, as we have seen through this presentation. And we are happy to help you find the right timing and concept for your project. So please feel free to reach out to us and find out the right concept for you. I see Jonathan already jumping in. I just use, I think I'll go over time, so thanks for your patience. Yeah, I will hand over back to you, Jonathan. Thank you.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you, Ali, for that presentation. Ali Boatua is the Technical Director, GoodWe Europe. And no time to rest. Please stick around for our panel discussion after this, and I'm pleased to say the questions are flooding in. One quick question before we do launch our panel discussion. Do you see a possible increase on the string inverter size in terms of AC power in the near future?
That's indeed a very good question and a very hot question, and the answer is yes. So to be straightforward, the answer is yes. And we are also a bit in a race with our competitors in where to go. We want to be the first ones, and that's our objective. But definitely the question is yes, and this will also come along with increasing power of the solar panels, with increasing input currents, driving also the output of the inverter to be growing. Still using the same form factor, the same mechanical design of the inverters. So that's the challenge, but that's actually the very high potential of the string technology.
Okay, so packing in more power. So our title of today's webinar was appropriate. So Ali, stick around. There's many more questions for you, but I'd like to welcome back onto the stage for our panel discussion, Josephine Burke from IHS Market, Thomas Herrick from GoodWe Europe, and a new speaker today. Christian Leib is the Managing Director of Yield Fox. Christian has a wide range of professional experience over 30 years, including working for a PV manufacturer, where he enlarged the value-added chain from module production right through to the investment in utility-scale PV projects on behalf of institutional investors. He has a wide range of experience across the financing industry, including structuring complex project financing. Christian, thank you very much for joining us today. Well, I think someone who's been involved in PV on the financing side, as you have for such a long time, over the last decade, I'm sure you would agree it's been a bit of a wild ride here in Europe in terms of the utility scale PV market. But what do you see in terms of financing within Europe of PV projects in 2021? What are some of the key trends emerging now?
Thank you, Jonathan, for a nice introduction. Welcome to everybody. I think the market from the financing perspective has changed drastically in the last 10 to 15 years. The market was started with some good reasons for PV business, like investors like no correlation to other market standards. It was a state-granted income stream with an FIT scheme in the past, and there was low volatility of the cash flow streams, less complexity of technical systems, and more or less also an ESG conform investment. And then was the next step that there was a move into the PPA market. So it means a lot of new regulations and also new learnings need to be done by the financing part, the investors themselves. And the next step will be an additional one, as we've heard from Thomas and also from Josephine. I'm really convinced that the hydrogen development will trigger the PV market tremendous. And that brings on the one hand more complexity, but brings on the other hand also larger investment volume, also combined with the trend from Josephine that we see bigger systems, and also the education and the mature market of investors will go up, and we will see additional groups of investors. And that's a really interesting trigger and a really interesting move from my point of view. And that starts right now and will be increasing the next year. Yeah.
Well, Christian, with these new investors coming in, and Josephine spoke about some of the traditional energy majors becoming increasingly engaged in PV. PV is often, part of its value is that it can be distributed, that there can be smaller projects. What are you seeing in terms of financing to allow some of these newer investors or bigger investors to reach critical volumes, to have enough of an asset to make the investment interesting for them?
Yeah, if you think about, let's say, large pension funds, if we think about large insurance companies, they need to have a very stable and secured income stream. And if there's a lot of volatility in the cash flow, it's not very much attractive to them. But if there are some players in between to balance and to mitigate the risk, and if they have a very clear and precise forecast for a cash flow situation, then they kick in. But some of them are starting only if they have at least 100 million euros or $100 million investment. Otherwise, it's too less to start all these activities on the due diligence process and to start the teams and education and set up the HR in that team. So that's my expectation from my point of view, that these kind of groups are much more kicking in as they do right now.
And this is also in light of, you know, the costs of PV always falling as well, isn't that right?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because in the past the problem was there are some thresholds to be held to start these investment activities, but year by year the total investment costs are dropping down. So that's a compensation. If we have more complexity, if we have more storage, if we have more hydrogen applications, so the investment volume will be increased. And then we have all of a sudden, let's say 200 and 300 megawatt PV and complex installations. And that's maybe then attractive if you have some very experienced partners in between with good rating and balance sheets.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Christian. I'll be feeding more questions through to you on the financing side throughout this panel discussion. Thomas Yaring, the GM of GoodWe Europe, I want to bring you back into the discussion now. We have a question from one of our attendees about warranty periods. Are string inverter suppliers, in particular GoodWe, extending the warranty periods for their string inverters? What are they at present, and what's the outlook?
Well, I think the standard industry is 5 years typically for the string inverters and for the hybrid inverters. We have a specific program that our installers, we have a specific program called GoodWe Plus, and this program, if you register and you successfully follow this program, we extend the warranty for string inverters up to 20 kilowatts to 10 years. This is in Europe. And we also looking at other regions of extending warranty periods, but it always depends also where, which region we're looking at, and also where inverters are actually installed, right? I mean, in Europe, it's pretty, in Germany, for example, most of the residential inverters are in the basement. That is pretty simple to extend the warranty period there, because you have standard temperatures across the year. If you have it maybe in Southern Europe and it's outside, maybe not even covered, then for sure it's much more challenging for the inverter for a long time life. And there's also regions where we're currently discussing long-term periods. For example, Mauritius is a country with a lot of humidity, a lot of heat, and we're discussing also long-term warranty terms with some of our customers there. But this is more challenging. It has to be more analyzed. So I think there is not this easy answer on that. I think the warranty periods goes up in general, yes, but it always depends on the segment and also in the region what we're talking about.
Okay, so it is a bit nuanced. So this next question might be a bit difficult. Do you advise as to a expected lifetime for a standard GoodWe string inverter?
Expected lifetime.
I can jump in here. Thomas, help you if you like.
Please do, Ali.
Yeah. So this is, Jonathan, this is a very typical question from a lot of developers and investors to know what is, regardless of the warranty, what is the expected lifetime of the components. And this is a very technical question, because it's at the end it's about the electronic components inside under simulated conditions, how long they would operate. And there are certain components that fail first. And with that, we can say that the lifetime, that expected lifetime of the components can go up to 30 years. It always depends on the conditions, but it can go up to 30 years. Okay. And there are standard reports that also we do provide to our customers. And if someone is interested in more details, we are happy to share these reports.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that, Ali. Josephine Burke, the Research and Analysis Manager at IHS Markit. Can I bring you in to the discussion in terms of the marketplace itself? are you seeing, is IHS Markit seeing a preference for central against string inverters for utility scale projects above 50 megawatts in capacity?
Well, this I should bring in our inverter analyst, but we do see like I said, we do see a strong growth in terms of string inverters compared to central, and that's really increased after 2018. And then what the threshold is really for the size of systems. Maybe GoodWe can give some examples of string inverters used in larger systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Ali, Thomas, do you have some examples of larger projects in which string inverters have been used?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the past with 80 kilowatts inverters, Thomas can. So on the past, the project size was rather smaller. 250 kilowatt. We are seeing a lot of projects now on the pipeline that are being planned with inverters beyond 50 kilowatts. So recently in Spain, for example, very strong interest in many projects going beyond 50 megawatts.
Okay. Ali, also maybe this one is for you. With the development of bifacial modules, what is GoodWe's offering that's compatible with bifacial technology?
The HT series for utility scale, but all our other CNI inverters, which Thomas briefly showed in one slide, are compatible with bifacial panels, and that's the main driver is the input current, and the high input current which the inverters can accept is the driver for that, and it brings the compatibility with the bifacial models.
Okay, we've spoken. Josephine spoke about the outlook for floating solar, which looks to be a really interesting market segment in a number of markets. Netherlands, Greece in particular was highlighted. There's one question about the technical side, Ali. Doesn't a centralized concept in floating projects lead to increased losses in terms of mismatches?
Very good question. It might, yes, it might. I mean, so, overall, it's about finding the optimized cable length and positioning and so on. For sure, if we put things in a centralized position, we lose a certain advantage of the string inverters by being close to the panels. But overall, what overall counts is the overall design, the overall system, and the best solution. And then we have the flexibility to adapt to the requirement of the project. And floating PV, having string inverters put everywhere on the lake is not very practical in terms of operation and maintenance, and that's the reason for that recommendation.
Yeah, O&M gets a lot more complicated when you actually have to go in a boat to make the changes. Just rolling a truck is complicated enough. Another question about, does it not make sense to install multi-MPPT inverters centrally as a way to decreasing DC cabling costs?
Multiple MPPT centrally, where possible. Maybe some manufacturers of central inverters go into this direction. Basically, we are realizing that with the string inverters. Not sure whether I'm maybe missing the question a little bit, but we with the string inverters we have that solution already.
Okay. Yeah, as I said, a large number of technical questions coming through, and I'm just trying to filter them in real time. Actually, a question about PID, and this kind of is a little bit on the back of floating. Have you observed increased PID in 1500 volt installations?
Very good question. Maybe I suggest we leave it later to Jason to comment from Longi.
On the module side, indeed, and we are getting a lot of questions about larger module formats, larger cell formats, so we'll be definitely coming back to those later. That's a good idea, Ali. I've got a question for Josephine, another one. You spoke about floating, but what do you see in terms of the market growth for agri-PV, agrivoltaics applications in Europe?
I mean, it's definitely a segment that is also growing. I mean, there are all these different ways to look at how to use land, right? Because it is becoming an issue when you have. I mean, it already was in certain areas back in the first wave, let's say, of PV installations. There were, in Germany they set on all these restrictions on not building PV on agricultural land, for example, and just restricting it to certain types of areas. And we're seeing, we can see similar trends in other markets where PV is growing. So finding these solutions to combine agriculture and PV, I think it's definitely something to that we can expect more of. But it also depend on on policy. I mean, we're not, just because we're in a competitive market doesn't mean that we're free from policy decisions. And policy directions can definitely guide the market into using one type of land or the other.
And this is particularly in countries where there are space constraints. Again, thinking kind of Benelux region.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Christian, I have a question from you about the financing side. Which factors do you seek in a project which has private PPAs to provide comfort for the financing of the project?
Oh, that's a very tricky question. So first of all, if you have the PPA, we need to have a look at the duration of the PPA and the terms. So if it's only a 5 years PPA, it's a totally different approach than you have a 10 or 15 years PPA. And you need to bring in from the financing side or from the investor's point of view, security in the cash flow. Then you can calculate all these topics very well. And that's much more challenging if you have short-term PPA for the one hand, and the other one, what is the rating of the PPA partner from the off-taker? If that is not a good rating, so it's also much more tricky and challenging to set up a financing structure. And you can only compensate if you increase your equity stake in this regards and reduce the debt side. So that is a trade-off.
Okay, and what about useful project life then? What are you seeing in terms of expectations from investors? What kind of lifetimes are they factoring in Europe?
Ah, that's interesting, because if you are going beyond the FIT schemes, then you have totally different setups. So I know a lot of IPPs or institutional investors looking for purchase of the plot of lands in order to have no limitation with any kind of lease contract, and they are calculating for 30 years, for 35 years, maybe some up to 40 years. Yeah. And that's not a limitation. So I think it's interesting to have a long time period and to calculate your returns and IRRs on a long time period, but you need to have the strong partners involved.
Okay, and then what about when you add storage to a project? We've been hearing a bit about the hydrogen economy and in terms of that being a demand driver, but perhaps as a first step, we're going to see firming PV power output by adding storage to projects. How do you go about kind of calculating LCOE or even just financing this project, getting a project like this off the ground in Europe today?
Yeah, I think that will be an increasing segment. But on the other side, we need to have a look at the off-taking situation. If there is a PPA, for instance, and you get a better PPA if you include storage components, then that makes life easier to set up the financing structure. If you would have only the same PPA pricing for storage, then you have additional capex, and then it might be tricky. Then it's a lot of parameters defining this investment decision, like irradiation and such things. But in general, I think that will be much more attractive, because then we have more flexibility when we need this energy and when will be the pricing for which time window and so on.
Josephine, would you like to add something on the back of that? You're working across the solar and storage teams at IHS Markit.
Yeah, well, I think Christian said it. It's really a way to gain flexibility, to be able to increase the values of PPAs. I think also when we're coming into the hydrogen economy, we'll also see the more use of batteries there as well to ensure longer power production from PV plants. and to avoid this, avoid this midday effect, because we need to start having renewables acting more, more as kind of baseload power if you want to power hydrogen electrolyzers.
Yeah. Okay. So more power when we need it, and also increasing the kind of capacity factor, I suppose, of the PV project itself. Thomas Herring, GM of GoodWe Europe. I have a couple of questions on the business side. What is the service process for GoodWe inverters in terms of technician availability in different countries, or replacement procedures for inverters under warranty?
We work with part of his own team, but we also work with a lot of service partners in the region. The reason why we do this is because we are very fast growing in the multiple regions. For example, in Poland or also in Germany, we've been growing a lot over the last 1.5 years. So building up this only with an own team is very, very difficult, because you cannot. It takes you some time to hire additional people and to get the service infrastructure in place. So having here external partners is much faster, because we can add people within the partner base. So we do this in all the major countries where we're working on, whether it's Germany, Italy, Spain, Poland, also Netherlands now, and we will do also building this up in France. So in this way, we have availability, and we have also local stock in place in these countries typically. So once we have an issue, typically we try to make the analysis via our monitoring platform, SAMS, or also working with the installer directly if it cannot detect it there. And once it has been detected that the product is faulty and has to be replaced, then we replace it from our local stock, typically, which we have in the country.
Okay. Also on the supply of some of the new inverters, when will the 250 kilowatt machine be available in Europe in 2021?
The 250 kilowatt machine.
That's right.
Yeah. I expect that this will be available in May this year.
Okay. Well, that's something you can mark in your calendars. I think we've almost come to time. Thomas, do you want to just close out our panel discussion this morning? Looking forward, what's on the agenda for GoodWe in Europe? How would you summarize what's in store?
I think for us the key element this year, we saw from the numbers from Josephine, the big market is the utility scale and the large machines. So this is I think the biggest challenge for us, to introduce them successfully in the market. And the second key major deliverable for us this year will be for sure also the batteries and the storage side to come out with all-in-one solutions and high voltage and low voltage batteries to cover the residential segment with the maximum amount of portfolio, and also to cover the industrial and the utility scale segment with all the products required in the market. And for us, it's still one of the big challenges for us is still, as we're growing very fast, we're growing also in terms of team size and in terms of service structure, to integrate all these people and manage the growth. I think this is manage the growth in the processes. This is a major challenge I have actually in the team, to add all these people and to also add them in the right way and be as efficient as possible there.
Yeah, and we're no longer in Europe the case of where there's one or two big countries that really define the market. We really now have multiple utility scale markets in Europe.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's a challenge to serve them all.
Yeah, sure. It's a challenge. The inverter business is a very complicated business because it has legal requirements in terms of grid requirements, but also certification requirements. The service requirement is a specific one. Then the service for utility scale projects is a different one than the one you do for residential market. It's a different setup you need there and the different talents you need there. So this is something we try to manage, and we juggle with all these different balls simultaneously. And also a key effort is, and that's maybe something I would like to mention, is we're building up a fairly significant project team this year in Europe mainly in Germany and Spain. This is where we target to have these people located. And in this way, the European team will be also the competence center for GoodWe International, next to India, where we have a second competence center for driving the international project business, not only for Europe and Africa, Middle East, but also for other regions like Latin America, for example.
Well, it's good you mentioned grid requirements, because that's what we're going to, one of the topics we're going to look into in more detail as we move into the second half of this webinar today. Thank you very much, everyone, for your comments. Thomas Herring, the GM of GoodWe Europe, Christian Leib, the Managing Director of Yield Fox, Josephine Burke, Research and Analysis Manager, IHS Markets, and Ali Boatour. But you're going to stick around, Ali, and answer some more technical questions. If you have sent through a technical question and we haven't had time to get to it, we'll bring that into the second half of the discussion. So please do stick around for that. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time this morning, and let's have a closer look at technology.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Perfect. Okay, moving on. Our next presentation today comes from a module supplier that really doesn't need much of an introduction. LONGi has been instrumental in driving the growth of monocrystalline technology in the global PV marketplace. And our speaker today, Jason Yan, is the Senior Product Marketing Manager with LONGi. He has 6 years experience in the company, and before taking on the product marketing role, actually had experience in the R&D team. So he really brings deep technical knowledge to the role and to our presentation today. Packed with power is the theme of our webinar today, and let's look at what is the building block, what produces that power, and that's the PV module. Jason, I'll pass the floor over to you, and thanks very much for joining us today.
So Jonathan, thanks for a nice introduction. I'm very honored to give a speech today. So today my topic is about the technology trend of PV module. So basically, my presentation will include 3 parts. The first part is about the technology trend of PV module, and the second part is about the LONGi product portfolio. And lastly, I will introduce the advantages of LONGi products. So first of all, I will give a quick review about the technology trend for the last 5 years. For example, in 2015, so LONGi started to put the monocrystalline silicon wafer, and we adopted the LCZ and diamond wiring slicing technology. The market share starts to about 18%, and after that we adopted the PERC cell and bifacial PERC technology to further increase the power and efficiency of motor. And then of course in the about 2018 and 2017 we start to adopt the half-cut technology, which can increase cell power and motor efficiency. And then in 2019, we launched the M6 standard wafer. The product is made for the HAMR 4. And the last year is 2020. We launched M10 optimeter size wafer size for the HAMR 5. So all of this technology is to get a low LCOE for our customer, because that means a higher profit for our customer. So talking about the technology trend for in couple of years, an interesting issue is about bifacial technology. So basically, LONGi promoted the bifacial models basically in 2017, and so that's is well ahead of other competitors. And since then, LONGi has continued to promote the bifacial model to increase its global market share. So for now, I think the global market share for the bifacial model is about 20%. Actually, in LONGi, the bifacial model is about a 40% share for the older models. And for now, I think LONGi's total shipment of bifacial mode has reached 10 gigawatts. And you can see in the figure, a typical bifacial mode contains 2 millimeters plus 2 millimeters dual glass to reduce the motor weight and increase the reliability. And also, we use the POE encapsulation to increase the reliability. And we have the unique design for the frame, which without the C side, which can reduce the shading on the rear side, and then furthermore can enhance our engine yield about 0.6%. So from my point of view, we think the bifacial market share will goes up increasingly in a couple of years, maybe 60 or 70. So another issue is about the optimal size for the PV model. Basically, in the second half year of the 2018, so different spec model wafer emerged, and LONGi, we think M6 spec, which is a 166 millimeter wafer, is based on the analysis of current cell and model compatibility and reform cost, and also the supply of glass is considered. We can see in the figure the limitation of large wafer and the cell and the model side for the existing capacities mainly include, for example, the diffuse annealed furnace tube and the graphic frame size or the soldering capacity and the assembling line size. So all these parameters will limit the larger wafer size for the existing capacity. And the M6 product basically is a full scenario product which is suitable for residential rooftop and commercial and utility scale power plants. It's well recognized by our customer. So basically, the shipment of LONGi's HAMR 4 based on M6 wafer is over 10 gigawatts for only 1 year. That's a legendary product. And talking about the size, so for the new capacity, the industry comes to think we can have larger wafer size. So based on the new build capacity and the entire industry, M10 wafer size was introduced to realize the standardization of the manufacturing system of the application system. So basically, LONGi and Jinko Solar and JA all started to promote the M10 wafer size, and it also the M10 wafer product can also realize the reduction of model manufacturing cost and the system both cost. So based on the thorough analysis, for example, for the production feasibility and model reliability, the system compatibility, for example, the system like the previous talk, GoodWe talk, for the string inverter, the max current is about 15 amps. So for the 182 millimeters product, the maximum current is about 15 amps. So it's very compatible with the current string inverter. Anyway, so optimal model dimension is determined and corresponding of wafer size of 182 millimeters is deduced. So from our point of view, we think the future innovation should focus back on the improvement of efficiency and power generation. Basically, the cell record of per cell is about 24%. So recently, LONGi's mass production cell efficiency has reached about 23.2%. We think there is still a room to increase cell efficiency. And plus, I think this year, N-type cells becomes a hot topic for the industry. We think TOPCon, SJT, where the cell technology also will emerge maybe in a couple of years. So second part, I will introduce the LONGi product portfolio. Basically, now we are offering the HYMO 4, which is based on M6 wafer, and HYMO 5, which is based on M10 wafer. For the HYMO 4 series, we have 60 cell product and 66, 72 cell product. So the HYMO 4, all of this product use a paper with low LID and 9 busbar half cell and M6 gallium doped wafer for increase the reliability and reduce the degradation of the model. And HYMO 4, as I mentioned before, so it's a product for the residential, C&I, rooftop, and utility scale applications. And for HYMO 5, we have 72 cell products. The power is about 540 watts with the efficiency about 21.1%. And the same with HYMO 4, we use the paper with low LID and 9 busbar half cut cells and 10 gallium doped wafer. So basically, HYMO 5 is a product for ultra large utility scale power plants. And for the HYMO 4 series, I'll talk in maybe details. So HYMO 4 is will be suitable for different application scenarios. It has standard width and optional in length. So the length of the HYMO 4 series model covers the range of 1.75 meters to 2.1 meters, and the model weight covers the range of 19.5 to 23.5 kilograms. And as mentioned, we have 60 cell mainly for the residential rooftop, and the 60 cell, 66 and 72 cell models for the residential and C&I applications. And for the HYMO 5 series, from our point of view, we think it's an optimal model size for the ultra large power plants. HYMO 5 has a front side power up to 540 watts with the efficiency 21.3 efficiency by using M10 wafer. And so the logic of developing the HYMO 5 is we have the inside on the size. We think the optimal model size for the ultra large power, and we take into account every factor such as manufacturing yield and transportation reliability and both cost to the industry chain, and then come to the M10 spec. And to further increase the model efficiency, and we adopt the smart soldering technology. So the technology basically is an integrated segment ribbon that can maximum the front, the side light capturing and cover the higher efficiency. Maybe it's about 0.3% higher efficiency compared with normal ribbons. And this is particularly detailed for the smart soldering technology. So we, in the front side, we have the triangular section can maximize the use of sunlight, in which way we can increase the model power. And in the flat section, we have the unique process to achieve dense soldering with low stress. Normally, it can achieve about 20% lower stress than the normal MBB bus bars. And also we reduced the gap between the cells to about 0.6 millimeters. In this way, it's the best combination of high efficiency, reliability, and cost. So we are not we are not satisfied with the current technology. So, and LONGi, every year we spend about 5 to 7% of our revenue on the R&D, and we continue to develop and evaluate advanced technology. And from our point of view, we think nowadays the N-type technology, such as passive contact, heterojunction, and back contact, has a huge room to increase the cell efficiency, about from probably from the 1% to 2.5% compared with P-type PERC cells. However, all these N-type technology will need to face a great challenge, such as the higher cost and high volume manufacturing. So we think we will introduce the right technology into production when it makes economic sense for the customer. And in third part, I will introduce briefly introduce the advantage of LONGi product. So we have built the bifacial model with best backability. We co-opted with third party and build a lot of pilot projects for the bifacial model all over the world, in South Arabia and China, India, and USA. So all of these data showed the bifacial gain for different ground surface and for different rack and track system. We can get almost 5% to 20% higher bifacial gain compared with the monofacial model. This data is very helpful for our customer to design our bifacial model projects. And talking about the bifacial mode, not all the bifacial mode shows the same energy yield. So in the PV yield workshop 2020, they showed the four companies different bifacial gain. So and LONGi, our bifacial gain is highest among them. For example, for the grass albedo, we can achieve 7.46% higher bifacial gain, and for the white albedo, we can achieve 11.44% higher bifacial gain. So why? So the main mechanism for why we can get the highest bifacial gain is because we can optimize our cell process, and we have unique no seed design for the short frame. So all of these will lead to a higher bifacial gain. And also in the PV magnet test, from the 28 to 2020, almost 2 years, the field test shows that LONGi product bifacial model shows a significantly higher energy yield than other companies. And not only is the bifacial model has a higher energy yield, but also we have the higher reliability. Actually, in ITC's test, LONGi is the only manufacturer that has performed well in 8 indicators in the ITC PV model index report and 2020. For example, LONGi can pass all the 8 tests, and the second company can only pass 4 tests. So LONGi's product is double times better than others. And for example, the test is very strict for the dynamic and mechanical loading. So the past criterion is about the power loss is less than 1%, and LONGi is the only manufacturer can pass this test. And also have another different 2 or 3 times IEC standard test, and we all passed the reliability test. So for the economic side, from the economic side point of view, when use the GoodWe inverter, so and for the 120 20 meters rack system, and in the ultra-large Middle East scenario, the HAMR 5 can save both costs about 0.15 cents per watt compared with 585 watts models. So the male board saving is attributed by the mounts and the foundation and the cables.
Okay, Jason, I'm going to jump in there before you get onto the summary. Thank you very much. We're running a little bit behind time. I've also got lots of technical questions for you. So you're going to join our panel discussion very shortly and get onto some of those technical questions, including a question on floating PV. So giving you a bit of a heads up, you can expect that. Thank you very much to Jason Young, Senior Product Marketing Manager for LONGi, and Jason will be joining our discussion in just a few moments. So we've had a lot of detail about the inverter, a lot of detail about the module or high-powered modules that are coming onto the market from LONGi. Let's now address PV power plant design and, in fact, how the PV power plant interacts with the grid itself. Our presenter today is Torsten Sieker. He's the Director, Global Industry Management, Solar Power for Phoenix Contact. Torsten is responsible for the international project development business, the development of new products, and their marketing and sales, which maybe explains why I can never get him on the phone. Torsten, you're a busy man, so thank you very much for your time today. And we heard earlier about some of the new regulations that have been in place in Germany a little bit longer in terms of how utility scale projects in Europe interact with the grid, and you're going to give us some more details on that. So thank you, Torsten.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for this very nice introduction, and a warm welcome to the audience. So today, in this around 50 minutes session, you will get some insights about how to support the grid stability in Europe with solar. And this is based on the state-of-the-art power feed-in technology. In addition, you will get also some information about the European Grid Code regulations and the different derived country-specific guidelines. But before I start with this power feed-in management, let me introduce Phoenix Contact just in a brief overview. Phoenix is headquartered in Germany in the landscape of Blomberg. Here you see the next slide. Sorry about the delay. That is the headquarters of Phoenix Contact in Germany in Blomberg. Blomberg is just 70 kilometers far away from Hanover. It's the next bigger town. Beside Blomberg, we have our Innovation Center Electronics in Bad Pyrmont. It's just 20 kilometers far away. In addition to that, we have also our group center of competence with own development, production, distribution center, and so on in Harrisburg, US, and as well as in Nanjing in China. To give some facts and figures about Phoenix Contact, Phoenix Contact was founded in 1923 in Essen. That's in North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany. And our last year turnover was more than 2.4 billion euro. And we have more than 17,000 employees worldwide. With our main production in China, US, and Germany, we have also additional production facilities like in Greece, as well in India for sure, Poland, Russia, and so on, and a very good electronic production in Taiwan and in Turkey. With our own development and production, we have more than 65,000 different articles available on stock. And Phoenix Contact is really represented in more than 55 subsidiaries worldwide. That means you have also a very big sales channel all over the world. If you ask about Phoenix Contact, what we are doing, what you can expect, what you will get from Phoenix, Phoenix offers you creative solutions in the fields of connection technology, electronic, and automation, and that on a journey for a smart world. Our statement from Phoenix Contact: we are a privately held company that is vertically integrated and independent, and it's entrepreneurial decision-making freedom. And that is a very, very big statement from Phoenix Contact, that we are really proud of that we can do our own independent decisions in our strategy, product portfolio, and so on. We as Phoenix Contact are focusing also on different vertical markets. We focusing on 4 markets, which is just differentiated in 12 different industries. On the one hand side, we have the infrastructure, the vertical market infrastructure. That's everything around building automation technology, water, wastewater treatment, and so on. The second is the process industry. Process for sure, that's oil and gas, that's pharmaceutical and chemicals. The third is the factory automation. This is mainly automotive and logistics industries, and very strong focus we have on the energy market. The energy market are divided into 3 different industries. On the one hand side, we have our own industry for power T&D, for transmission and distribution, to offer components, solution, and systems for the part of power T&D. In addition, wind power as a renewable, and we have also a very, very strong focus on the solar power. In the solar power, we offer different or a bright portfolio of components, systems, and solutions for hybrid energy systems, for rooftop systems, that's more or less residential, commercial, and for utility scale plants. And for the utility scales, especially, everything is around the PV park management. That is the part for monitoring and control. And in addition, we offer also different solutions and components for the tracking systems itself. If you speak about renewables, I just have one chart with me about the role of energy, especially in Germany. And if you check for last year, the net power generation in Germany, the renewables supported more than 50% of the net power generation in Germany by the renewables. And the split is of the renewables, for sure. The highest share is wind power, actually, with 26%, just coming with solar, with 13% in Germany, and then along with hydropower and biomass. To put it out in another slide or another visualization, you see the development of renewable energies. And we started in the early 90s, and actually see that the growth in renewables already take part a high share of the power generation in Germany as well as in Europe. And in Germany, actually, it's more than 50% of the net power generation is done by the renewables. But this high power generation by renewables also lead into some challenges because of the renewables, mainly wind and solar. They are not producing power on the demand of consumption. They're producing power by wind and sunshine. And that means that this power generation is quite volatile. But on the other hand side, you have also a high demand of a stable and unbroken energy supply system. It's not accepted that you have downtimes in the power supply. That is absolutely not accepted. And therefore, you have to have developed new technologies in the power feed-in management to meet the volatile renewable energy production with the high demand on stable supply systems. And on the right-hand side, you see if you have already, and that's happened several months also in Germany, that you have an energy surplus on very sunny or windy days. And this is stored already in large battery system or huge immobility. But that leads also in new technologies, so-called sector coupling, to couple different sectors together as the load or energy management system. Today, I focus more on the technologies for the power feed-in and controls. There are some regulation, that means how to feed in the power in Europe into the grid. Therefore, we have, as the good news, we have this requirement for generators called RFG codes. That is created by the European Union. How to connect the energy generating units to the grid. That's not only made for solar, that's overall for every energy generating unit. We have these RFG codes in Europe, and that is for all voltage levels. And this is already published in May 2016. And this national or this international European grid codes are transferred into local requirements. And for instance, in Germany, it was done by the VDE. And this VDE regulations are valid since April 2019. That means since April 2019, the German regulations follow the European grid codes with the latest version. And that is split just here. We have an overview about the different voltage levels. For the low voltage level, that is the VDE HR guideline 4100 and 4105. For the medium voltage, that's from 10 to 60 kilowatt. That's the VDE AR 4110. For the high voltage, that's the 110 kilowatt. You have the guideline for the VDE, the 4120, and for the high voltage above 220 and 380 kilowatt, you have the guideline 4130. That means this European grid code regulations are derived in the German guidelines into 5 different guidelines. To make it a bit more concrete, what Phoenix is doing, it's called for us park management or integrated PV park management. That's everything about monitoring and control of PV parks. And this is just a picture of 11 megawatt park. And you find in 11 megawatt park for sure thousands of PV modules, several inverters, string or central inverters, and you have already data logging inside to log all the different data, to acquire the data from inverters from the strings. In addition to that, they're also necessary to have some weather sensors on site, just to have a reference to calculate your power output, your revenues, and so on. You can calculate this also compared to the reference, but therefore you need really weather sensors on site. And today, where we speak about is this feed-in control or feed-in management. That is only used one time in a PV plant, independent of the size of the PV plant. It's only one time at the grid connection point, but this is the most complex one because of you have to handle the power at the grid connection point to feed in, to insert the power into the grid according to the grid regulations and grid guidelines. For this, if you speak about this feed-in control, the principle at all is that you receive your control specification from the network operator or from the grid owner. They send the information. We are different protocol or interfaces which are available. In addition, you measure at the feeding point the energy. We are an energy meter or analyzer. You measure the actual power output, and then you calculate based on the control specification of the network operator. You calculate the new performance targets, and these targets, these new set points, are broadcasted to the different inverters in the field. And this communication is done via different interfaces because of their different inverters installed on site. And that is a control principle at all. You have the control out, you have the power output controlled on the frequency, on the grid frequency. And if you have a rising frequency, you have to reduce the power output of your PV plant because of you have a too high generation, or on the other way around, the consumption in the network is too less. Therefore, you have to reduce the power. And this power handling, this feed-in management, is handled at this feed-in management system at the grid connection point. To give a bit more or a detailed insight about the functionality, you have to consider some important features. The important feature is the control speed. Because of you have to react at the grid connection point very fast. Yet, because of you spread out, you broadcast the information to the different inverters, and the inverter reduce the power, and you measure the power again. And this control loop, you will have dead times or delay times, which has to be considered. That is a very important feature, that you have really a good supporting power output of your solar plant to the grid. In addition, you have to handle different data interfaces from the network operator, because we can receive the data via digital signals, analog signals, or what is coming more and more in Germany is to get the signals via serial interfaces. But also you have to communicate to the different inverters, and therefore you need different inverter communication protocols. And you have to deal with different control algorithms. It's not possible to have only one algorithm to control, for instance, the active power according to frequency. That is one characteristic, but at the end, if you follow on the European grid codes, it's necessary to have more algorithms inside your control system. And that is given on the next slide. It is a very technical slide, sorry for that, but it just gives a control structure. For the grid operator, they normally send the demand signals to this feed-in management or a power control unit, but also the power control unit sends the data like actual power or maximum power, reactive power, also to the grid operator. In addition, it's also necessary to have a second interface for a third party if you want to handle your energy at an energy stock market. Therefore, it's necessary to have an additional interface. And with that, you have also to integrate a prioritization. Which information or which demand has a higher prioritization from the grid operator to stabilize the grid, to support the grid with, for instance, reactive power, or to put get the best income if you sell the energy to the stock market. This prioritization is also necessary to have this inside the power control unit. At the end, the actual energy are measured at the substation as an energy meter or as a power analyzer, whatever. You get the actual information. It's a grid connection point. Therefore, you calculate the new set points and send the data to the different inverters. And the inverters handle the power as an active power or the reactive power. There's also a bidirectional communication between your inverters and your power control unit, because of the values of the inverters are also read by the power control unit. On the right hand side, you just see the different curves which are available. But to make a long story short, there are two main characteristics inside. Just to handle the active power and to handle or support the grid, to stabilize the grid with reactive power. And that is coming more and more important in Europe as well as in Germany, support the grid to stabilize the grid with reactive power. And therefore we have different characteristics integrated in. How looks like the solution in detail? We offer two different solutions. This is the main part. This is our power control unit. It's a controller. It's a PLC controller with the software on board. Or you can also get a pre-configured cabinet with the controller inside, with some network components, power supply, terminal blocks inside as a pre-configured version. And with this prefigured version, you see there's a bit space inside where you can enter according to the requirements of your grid provider. The different inputs. It is an analog or digital signal. It's already a serial interface. This can you just put into the interface cabinet then you have your complete solution. The functionality, just to sum up the functionality of the power control unit. The power control unit can handle for sure the active power control based on the frequency to reduce or to higher up the power according to the grid frequency. A very important part and the main part actually is to provide also reactive power. The reactive power, you can choose between different characteristics. Because of these characteristics are requested by the European grid codes and as well as for the German guidelines. That is a cosinus phi to control your reactive power according to cosinus phi, or the reactive power based on the voltage, based on the power, or you have also your reactive power with the voltage limitation. Those are all the different characteristics which are required from the European grid codes. We have integrated also this reactive power prioritizing operating mode because of you have to select the proper characteristic, also in combinations with the active power control. What is different from our solution is that we have open and flexible software architecture. It's not a closed proprietary software solution, it's an open software architecture. Because of that, the system integrator can add this customer-specific expansions with this open interfaces. Because of on one time you need different meters which should be integrated on site. You have to select the inverter which are used on site. Therefore, we provide this different interfaces which can make use by the system integrators. And at the end, we have this flexible interface adaptation to the different energy provider, direct marketeers, this third-party interface. We have the interface to the energy measuring devices, mainly energy meters or some power analyzers, and the portal connection. This is also a very important topic to speak about, the connection which is necessary to connect to different web portals. Because of you want to visualize, you want to maintain your PV plans via different web portals. That is the part of the feed-in management and how to meet the regulations. That is the last slide from my side, that we have the type, this is our power control unit, that we have certified this power control unit according to the grid codes, not only for type so-called type 2 for PV. This certification is also that you can make use of this power control unit for synchronous generators, for solar and storage systems. Just to explain, synchronous generators that are wind turbines, that's combined power and heat generators. All these synchronous generators can also controlled by this power control unit, as well as for solar and storage systems. We integrated all the different control characteristics which are necessary to follow this RFG code, this European RFG code. That is what we also integrated in our control solution. For Germany, we have the certification already since May 2019, according the guideline for medium voltage levels and for high voltage levels. For the extra high voltage level, so 4130, it's actually not certified because of actually we don't see applications where the solar power or the solar plant feed in the power into the 380 kilowatt system. And to summarize, for the European countries, this certification is under preparation, but it's just an act of evaluation and documentation because of we follow already this European RFG codes. Therefore, it's quite easy to certify also additional countries, but that has to be done by an independent laboratory, an independent body, the certification. It's not able to do the certification by the manufacturers. Therefore, you need really this independent laboratories, like we have here on the right-hand side. It's a company MOE in Germany, which we work with. That's already a short a brief overview about the feed-in management, some words about the regulations, the European regulation, and the grid codes for Germany. And I think I can't give all the detailed information which is necessary to understand how to make use of the feed-in management system. But therefore, you are really invited to check out our website or our landing page for Phoenix Contact, where you can also discover more information, where you get more insight about that. Or come directly in contact with me, that I can share more information with you about regulations, guidelines, or the feed-in management itself. So far, thank you from my side, and I hand over back again to Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Torsten, for that overview. And of course, you're encouraged to contact any of our speakers today, any of the GoodWe team. We're willing to follow up with some more information. And Torsten, thank you for that. One quick question on the back of your presentation. What about in terms of supplying the C&I space, so the commercial rooftop space? Are these kind of requirements for power plant controllers coming in for larger rooftop installations, and will Phoenix Contact supply that?
Yeah, to start with the residential installation, therefore you have also a feed-in management which is necessary, but that is done by the inverter itself. The inverter inserts the power directly in the low voltage grid of the 240, 400 volt grid. And therefore the inverter do this power control by themselves. But if you feed in the power for a large commercial rooftop system with a central transformer, with a substation, then you have to have an additional power control unit to control the power at the grid connection point, because of that's the topic behind.
And Phoenix Contact does supply that?
Yeah, sure.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Torsten Seeger. He is the Director of Global Industry Management Solar Power for Phoenix Contact. And I'd like to welcome back Ali Boutour, who is the Technical Director at GoodWe Europe, and Jason Yan, the Senior Product Senior Product Marketing Manager at LONGi. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Well, let's do a quick fire question round to round out today's webinar. Now, one of the questions that we couldn't get to, actually, Ali, first one to you. Is there any impact on the inverter supply in terms of these larger wafer formats, M10 and G12, and these large format modules in terms of string sizes and the max DC current for the inverter?
Well, so for the larger wafers come with a higher current, so that's one of the direct impacts, and that's the impact on the inverter, and that's how we react by increasing the input current of the inverters for each DC input. So that's something which we're well prepared for. And the development of the panels also come with change in the voltage, but the maximum voltage remains the same. That's the 1500 volts system, which is getting the standard nowadays, and that might, depending on the module which is used, it might result in a shorter or longer string, depending on the module characteristic, but that has no direct impact on the inverter itself. Okay, and are the GoodWe products compatible with 210 millimeter cells? In more detail, with this module at 1500 volts, is it possible to create a string of 10 to 20 kilowatt peak bifaciality and connect that? Is that possible? Yes, it's possible. It's definitely possible. I think the person who had the question, we're very welcome to go with us into the details of designing such a power plant. Yeah, I mean, I just give it as a short answer. Yes, it's possible because we have the high input current capability, and we can match the power class and the voltage as well. Okay, thank you. Jason, over to you. Does LONGi suggest a particular kind of module for floating plants? Do you suggest the use of a glass or a bifacial module? What's the recommendation from LONGi there?
So basically, for the floating system, we think from the reliability point of view, we think bifacial model for the dual glass is better than monofacial models because in the floating system, we want a higher mechanical loading property and high resistance to the human and some other issues. However, if we use the bifacial model, that actually we did some analysis for the system cost for the bifacial model compared with monofacial model. So for the economic point of view, the monofacial model will save a slight cost than the bifacial model. And so we think we recommend if you use the bifacial model for the floating system. It's more safe and more reliable, and the both costs may be the same. Yeah.
And what are the current warranties that LONGi is offering?
Current warranty for the bifacial model, right?
I believe so, or just in general, would you say?
Okay, in general, so for the monofacial model, the current warranty is 25 years, and for the bifacial model, the warranty is about 30 years.
And this is a performance warranty, not a manufacturer warranty.
Yeah, actually, for example, for the bifacial model, the first year we want to warrant the degradation. The first year degradation is the power degradation is less than 2%. So for the second year for the last 30 years, the degradation is less than 0.45%. So eventually the power of the model will bigger than about 85% compared with original power.
Okay, so a linear power output warranty. Torsten, bringing you in, we are jumping around a little bit, but that's rather the nature of the discussion. Is there a solution in terms of power plant controllers for a country that has no grid code?
Yeah, sure. Because of that's the easiest part and the most tricky part, because the easiest part is you have no regulations. And that means you follow normally the active power control based power on the frequency, on the grid frequency. And then you can set, aligned with the grid operator, you can set what about the set points in the frequency, and what is about the ramping, how fast should be the action or reaction time of this control. And that is just aligned between the grid owner or the grid operator and the EPC. That is the tricky part, because of if you don't have regulations, you have to do this one by one. But the control technology in the background can handle this. It's just to handle different set points.
Okay, and Torsten, how do you work with inverter suppliers like GoodWe in terms of when grid regulations come in, of course, when there is a grid code?
Yeah, for sure, because it makes sense to collaborate with inverter manufacturer like GoodWe, because of we send the control signals to the inverter, and the inverter have to reduce the power to provide reactive power. That should be hand in hand.
Okay, Ali, from your side, can you add something to that?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to add something on it. I mean, the cooperation with PPC providers like Phoenix Contact is for us as an inverter manufacturer something very, very critical. I mean, you see the trend. We as inverter manufacturer try to pack as many features and many components from the system inside the inverter. But of course, it comes with the complexity which is related to it, and the PPC part is maybe the most complex thing in terms of requirement, because it's the interface to the grid. It's Torsten explained all of it and the related details, and that's something which we of course like, and that's something very critical, because you can't fail, because if you fail, you don't provide energy to the grid, right? And that's something which we like working with specialists and partners like Phoenix Contact.
Okay, Jason, over to you. One question we had earlier was about the prevalence of PID in 1500 volt installations. Is this something that LONGi has been observing?
Actually, for the PID issue, before we shipped our model, we will do the internal PID test for the 1500 volts system. So normally the PID data for the bifacial mode is less than, I think, less than 2% for the, I think for 2 times IC standard, which means 196 hours. So I think that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, and it's not impacted by the higher voltages. Okay, well, gentlemen, I think we have come to time. We are 10 minutes over already. I didn't get to all of the questions, unfortunately, but as everyone has said, we do encourage you to follow up directly with all of our presenters today. You might be able to hear the workmen are beginning out the front of my windows. Perhaps it's an opportunity time to draw a line under our webinar today. Thank you very much, Torsten Sieger from Phoenix Contact, Ali Burtur from GoodWe Europe, and Jason Yang from Phoenix, from Longi. Thank you to all of our presenters, Thomas Herring, the Managing Director of GoodWe Europe, Josephine Burke, Research and Analysis Manager at IHS Markit, and Christian Leib, the Managing Director at Yield Fox. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time today, and thank you for your attendance, for joining our webinar. It was a great pleasure to have so many great questions coming through. As you can see up on the screen now, we have lots of great news on the PV Magazine portals, and we were talking Europe today, so I encourage you not only to check out PV Magazine Global, but also our German, French, and Spanish sites for the latest news right across Europe in your language. Here there is an image of the cover of our March edition, which was just out just this week. You can pick up that, either a hard copy or, of course, a digital PDF or flipbook version. Stay in touch with us also to find out about upcoming webinars, also some of our digital events that are coming up. We have our roundtables program that is taking shape. You will be receiving a survey from the GoToWebinar platform, and I encourage you to fill that out to help us to optimize and improve our webinars for you. Thanks once again to all of our speakers, Thomas Herring, Josephine Burke, Ali Burtur, Christian Leib, Jason Yan, Torsten Sieger. Thank you for your attention. My name is Jonathan Gifford. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of PV Magazine Global. And here's to bigger, better, smarter, and more powerful PV projects in 2021 right across Europe. Thank you very much, and all the best.